what we see, I think, in with this issue, and with so many other issues, is that there's an Israeli idea, right, that it is better to get something done, to have facts on the ground, than to worry about the long-term effects later. That's a very Israeli mentality, and it's very, very difficult for Americans to deal with that because that's very un-American. That's just not the way Americans think. We think in terms of process, how do you get from here to there? We have to think long-term. That's just not the way Israelis think. And that has worked to Israel's advantage in many, many cases. But in issues like this, in issues of religion and state, in issues of civil marriage, which Israel does not have to this day, right? In issues like women's rights, I mean, all of these things, right? There are not necessarily clear rules. I mean, Israel has gotten much, much better, and it is a thriving civil democracy with equal rights for all, but it has not been an easy road. And this is a great example. So who decided these men should be in charge? Who decided that it should be an ultra-Orthodox synagogue? What's the stopgap? You're like, where are the checks and balances? So there are none. The only balance on them is the Supreme Court. So that's where things are now. But it's a very sort of typical Israeli situation.
But that's I think what concerns me most of all is this is just the beginning. When I look at some of these ultra-Orthodox rabbis, they don't look any different and they don't sound any different from the Ayatollahs in Iran. They really don't. And if it starts with the wall and the civil marriage and what you can do and what you can't, I mean, I do not feel comfortable walking in Jerusalem anymore, and I used to live there. I mean, it's now people look at you if you're not dressed the way they want you to be dressed.
Well, right. It's only in certain neighborhoods, right? Not in the whole city.
It's becoming that way. It's becoming.
I'd say it's only in a couple of neighborhoods where that happens. But I have to tell you, the thing that upsets me the most are the bus lines paid for by the city, where women sit in the back, where women are forced to sit in the back. So the ultra-Orthodox, they're called the Mehadrim bus lines. The ultra-Orthodox requested from the city that certain bus lines that went through certain religious, meaning ultra-Orthodox neighborhoods, that there was uncomfortable mixing of the sexes on the buses, and they wanted the sexes separated. So the women literally sit at the back of the bus.
Oh my God, it's so right here.
I know, you could not have a worse picture for an American listening than people sitting at the back, people being forced to sit at the back of the bus. So my issue with that, look, if those women, I mean, if the women from those neighborhoods, from these families choose to sit at the back of the bus, that's their prerogative, right? I personally have a problem that Israeli tax money is going to pay for those buses. That's
what happens to the buses that go from not that neighborhood but through that neighborhood?
So some of them are. So some of them, I mean, I don't know which bus line exactly, but some of them are those mehadrin, meaning super kosher, meaning the sexes are separate, and some of them are not. I don't know which
bus to get on.
Right, I guess, those who know which buses to get on. To me, the issue is not, again, that people want to have separate seating on buses, right? And that's not the issue for me. If they want to do that, please go right ahead. The issue is that the Israeli government is actually paying for it.
Yeah.
And again, I don't pay Israeli taxes. I'm not a citizen, but I'm offended by that personally. So again, I don't think the ultra-Orthodox are taking over, but I do think there is an abdication of the struggle, I would say, on behalf of a lot of people, because they just don't care enough, or they have other things that they want to fight about, or this is not their fight. Like they don't want to go to Meir Sharim anyway, so what do they care what happens in Meir Sharim?
I just, that young man talking about, I mean, he could have been more than 25, saying how women's job is to raise children. It's not to pray. I mean, he said that very clearly.
Again, that is not, I mean, we should separate, that is not what the moderate Orthodox, the national religious, that is not what the vast majority of them think. And we're still talking about a small minority of Israeli population, but they're a very vocal minority, and they are a very reliable voting bloc. And that's why the politicians listen to them, because they are guaranteed bloc. See? Yeah, Francis.
A couple weeks ago, we had Barbara Goldstein, who's the Deputy Executive Director of the Hadassah office in Israel. And I asked her about it because I knew we were having this program. And she said she used to demonstrate there, and she's been arrested.
They're at the cartel, you mean?
Right. But she said it's a non-issue, because the secular women in Israel don't care about it. And it's an absolute non-issue for most people. and there's other places where people can have a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, and she said now most Israelis look at the women who are part of this as just kind of kooks. And she said,
look,
and she doesn't demonstrate anymore because, she said we have other priorities.
I think there's two things. One is, what I was saying earlier is that the typical Israeli person just thinks that a desire of a group of women to want to pray someplace, if they're not ultra-Orthodox, they just can't even understand the desire of anyone to pray. They don't understand that issue, to do or have a religious experience. But I think you're saying something else. I think you're also saying that even those women, it's usually Anglo-Saxon or some women who are interested in that have decided, you know what, the kotel is really not the be-all and end-all. It's not worth it. Yes, it's a lost cause, and why is that spot got to be so? There's plenty of other religious spots, and why?
The feeling is a wall that's at the other end is still the wall.
Right, Robinson's Arch. So that's one compromise.
So like on the men's side, on the front, on the far left, there's a tunnel.
Yeah.
Is that like what Robinson's Arch is?
No. It's an open area, and it's a beautiful, beautiful area. It doesn't look very different from the Kotel. It's been unearthed. It's a big archaeological dig. So that's what's there. Now, the issue with Robinson's Arch, right, is that the rules there are different rules there. And I don't mean about religious things. I mean that if you come past a certain hour in the morning, you have to pay to enter. And they don't. So when you're looking at the Kotel, the men's section is here. The women's section, it's next to the women's section. Right?
Facing
I'm sorry? It's open to the public all day, but past 9, I think, in the morning or 10, you have to pay to enter. The state also does not supply Sidurim or Sefer Torah as they do in the men's section. So it's not equal, right? But maybe that's a compromise that has been suggested by some that change the rules of Robinson's Arch so that it's more welcoming. Right? We talk about welcoming in every Jewish institution. Right? Make it equal so that the state supplies all of those things so that you don't have to come up with, rent a Sefer Torah somewhere, right? And that's where these other ceremonies will take place. But again, there's only one issue. What about those national ceremonies that are not happening there anymore? That, I think, to me, that's even more important because part of me thinks, you know what, I am affected by the Kotel. I really am when I go there, but I am just as happy praying elsewhere, and I wonder. I wonder what that means.
So, if the women were ever parachutes, were they ever allowed to participate in that induction ceremony?
Yes.
They were.
No, but it wasn't done at the Kotel. It was done, 200 feet away over here.
Awesome.
But now those ceremonies are not taking place. They're not taking place there. They're taking place in other places. Right? But again, let me ask you this question. Right? I say I. So it makes me upset. I get upset when I feel that the American government is telling the Israeli government, we know what's best for you. Right? You think, and again, maybe sometimes they do, but to me that's just very patronizing. It's very infantilizing. We know what's best for you. You who live there day in and day out, you don't really know what's best for you. We know what's best for you. Right? To me, that's annoying. Okay? So the question is, how different is that from 50,000 diaspora Jews sending letters to Prime Minister Netanyahu saying, we know what's best for the most complicated square kilometer of real estate in the world. We know what's best. Now again, I'm not saying it's equal. I'm just raising the question because I think it's complicated. And that's the question that was asked before about so what does the Israeli government think about it? I think they think it's really complicated. That's what I think.
But the Israeli government, in its amorphous form, asked for our constant support.
That's right.
So they're asking me for my constant support. I feel that I have a right to voice an opinion that says if you're asking me to support you financially, physically, a whole other sources, then I think that I have a right to voice an opinion that on issues.
I think that's a very valid opinion, right? That if you're going to keep asking me for money, for financial support, for me to pressure my congressional delegation, right? Then I should be able to say whatever I want.
Letters that are being sent to the government.
Steve, what?
I was just saying that in general, like if you were to send an email to the White House, I guarantee you the president isn't reading them. It's
Right.
probably the same thing, you know, these letters are being sent to.
Oh, no. But the same thing
I was
happened.
not reading them.
I guarantee you the same thing. No. But that, look, but just because even that's, wait, hold on a second. So and please, everyone will get a chance to speak. Let me just say one thing. Just because Bibi Netanyahu doesn't read the letters, the fact that 50,000 or 100,000 come in, I think matters.
Yeah.
Right? So just as when you lobby the White House, right? I'm sure the president doesn't read our letters about drilling for oil in Alaska, but you know what? If 1 million Americans send a letter about it, I think it matters. So he doesn't personally read them, but I think they do make,
They count.
right, I think they count, right, and they weigh them.
They weigh
Yeah,
them.
Elliot.
Who has control over the dump where the Arabs have been putting the artifacts that they've been digging up on the...
I believe it was a municipal dump. It was just a city dump. Now you're bringing in a whole nother, right?
I know, but
That was,
that's part of our
It was part of
history
a-
that they're trying
yes.
to throw away and so that we can't...
That's right. That's
we've
right.
Been there.
And the Israeli archaeological teams went to the municipal dump and searched through and found artifacts. That's exactly right. Again, yes, Lydia.
I think it's kind of ironic that they built up this area so that people would come and tourists would come. I'm thinking, but you support, you've got to go to Israel, you've got to visit Israel. I mean, one of the things you always visualize, I haven't been, but one of the things you visualize is going to the wall. So they build out this area so that more people will come, and now they're making it so that people are, well, women.
No, I wouldn't. So I don't think they're saying don't come. I don't think the Israeli government is saying don't come. I think what's happening is that people who are willing to put up with an uncomfortable situation, meaning women coming to the Kotel saying, my Orthodox rabbi says that women are allowed to read from the Torah in a women's prayer group, right? That idea is probably 25, 30 years old, right? If not more, right? So why can't I do it here? Now, they used to sort of swallow that and say, okay, can't do it. I don't think they're willing to take it anymore. So it is, I think, a very healthy airing of what I'm really thinking, as opposed to, I'm not going to say what I really think for the good of the state or something like that. I think they're not willing to do that anymore. And in a way, I think that's good. They should be able to say whatever they want to say. Right?
Who's they?
They, meaning anyone who has a different opinion from what happens at the Kotel. I think the problem is that the solution that's been reached is not palatable to people who are not who are sort of spiritually minded, who are not ultra-Orthodox. Basically, no one's happy with it, except the ultra-Orthodox. But most of the people who are not happy with it, I think, don't care enough to make a big stink. I promise you, if 500,000, I mean, look, in 1983, I think, I'm trying to remember what year that first Peace Now rally was. The left-wing group that was founded in reaction to the war in Lebanon, right, which is called Peace Now, Shalom Achshav, they held a rally, right, their first rally, it had something like 400,000 people there. Remember, this is Israel, 30 years ago almost, right, 400,000 people, just imagine that in a country the size of America. It was like 1/8 of the population was at a rally, right? It was much larger than Woodstock, right? But you're absolutely right. But just imagine, right, if 30 million Americans were at one political rally, right? It doesn't even matter what was said there. The government took notice that many people stood up. I highly doubt you will ever see a rally with that many people about the Kotel.